From abandoned teenager to overcomer, the true story that changed my life forever. I never thought I'd feel fear in my own home. I grew up believing that coldness was normal, that constant pressure and a lack of affection were part of what family meant. My life before the turning point was a silent routine of submission and restraint, always attentive to the reactions of my mother, Sylvia, and my father, Rogerio, learning early on to measure every gesture and word so as not to provoke anger or disdain. Vacations, which should have been moments of rest, were, for my sister Bianca and me, merely periods of vigilance disguised as care. I remember how our small joys were constantly diminished, compared, or ignored. Any attempt to protest or question was met with veiled criticism or silent punishment. I learned to internalize the guilt and live with the emotional void, as if it were a natural part of life, never imagining that something different, lighter, more human could exist. This feeling of inadequacy turned into constant anxiety, gnawing at me from within and making every family interaction a daily challenge, almost a silent battle to simply exist without being crushed. It was difficult to even breathe without feeling like I was doing something wrong. My sister Bianca experienced this in a similar way, but her way of coping with her fear was to withdraw even further, hiding her emotions in layers of silence and obedience. Everything began to change at the most unexpected moment. A trip that, in theory, should have been fun, turned into a revealing nightmare. My parents put us in the car with the promise of a different kind of trip, but upon arriving at the hotel parking lot, I was simply left behind. They claimed it was to save money on Bianca's room, who deserved more comfort, while I was supposed to learn to be responsible. The feeling of abandonment was overwhelming. For the first time, I experienced firsthand what it meant to not be a priority for those who claimed to love me. Vulnerability turned into a mixture of anger, confusion, and profound sadness. I was alone, in the middle of an unfamiliar place, surrounded by cars and people going about their daily lives, oblivious to a lost teenager trying to understand what had happened. Every minute felt like an eternity, and in this forced isolation, I realized my reality had no protection whatsoever. My childhood experiences, small oversights, constant criticism, a lack of empathy, had prepared me to feel this abandonment without surprise. But even so, the pain was unprecedented, sharp, and difficult to contain. I began to realize that life as I knew it wasn't normal, that my parents' supposed care was a facade of control and disdain, and that perhaps the only way out was to seek help outside of what I called home. After this episode, I was taken in by a foster family who offered me something I hadn't even known existed: security. Donna Lucia and Mr. Antonio welcomed me with genuine kindness, smiles that concealed nothing, and words that conveyed true care. For the first time, I didn't have to hide my feelings or measure every gesture to avoid veiled punishment. The change was immediate, yet frightening at the same time. Being in a healthy environment brought back all the years of neglect and fear. Memories of screams, coldness, and abandonment flooded my mind, provoking a mixture of relief and pain. I realized that part of me was still bracing myself for rejection. At any moment, and dealing with this internal distrust was as difficult as facing my parents. It was during this time that I met Helena, the social worker responsible for my case, whose firmness and empathy gave me a sense of the possibility of justice and care. Gradually, with the support of my guardians and the constant monitoring of Child Protective Services, I began to understand that my life experience didn't define my worth, and that it was possible to rebuild something better. The process of emotional reconstruction began with small things: sincere conversations, structured schedules, shared meals without tension, and the ability to feel protected without fear. Meanwhile, the relationship with my parents continued to deteriorate. Sylvia insisted on discrediting me, claiming I was making up stories to get attention, while Rogerio tried to justify everything as a difference in upbringing. I remember the official meeting where tensions exploded. Sylvia lost control, attacked Rogerio, and in that moment, everything became clear. Not only had they failed to care for us, but they had cultivated an unstable and toxic environment, incapable of providing any form of genuine affection. Witnessing this instability left me feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief at finally understanding the gravity of the situation, sadness for everything we had already been through. It was also a crucial turning point because, at that moment, it became impossible to deny that permanent guardianship was necessary. I needed to escape that reality, to survive emotionally. This revelation brought a tremendous weight, but also a newfound hope. For the first time, I realized I deserved better, and that there were adults willing to consistently protect me. The transition was slow, but each day I felt my own worth emerging from within the chaos that had been my childhood. Little by little, I began to notice significant internal changes. Living with my new family taught me empathy, patience, and unconditional love. My sense of security, once constantly threatened, began to strengthen. Over time, I was able to look at my own life and understand that the abuse I had suffered was not my fault, nor an indication of weakness. I began to set small goals, to study without fear of criticism, to establish friendships without fear of rejection, to express my opinions without feeling guilty. Each small achievement was a silent victory against years of neglect and abandonment. At the same time, I witnessed the transformation of my sister Bianca, who found the courage to report abuse and seek her own protection. Seeing this change in her gave me a sense of purpose, to fight not only for myself, but for her, ensuring that neither of us would suffer again. I still felt old pain and fears, but the presence of trusted adults and a loving environment began to create roots of resilience within me. The idea of the future, once a distant concept, began to become tangible. At first, dealing with old traumas was almost like breathing water. Every effort to move forward felt suffocating. Sometimes I woke in the middle of the night feeling the fear that at any moment something bad would happen, like in the old days when any scream or silence in my parents' house could mean punishment or disapproval. It was difficult to separate the past from the present. Even surrounded by affection, my body and mind reacted as if they were still on the front lines of an emotional battlefield. I caught myself in small moments, hesitating before laughing or expressing myself as if I needed to measure every gesture to ensure no one would be disappointed. Each step forward was accompanied by an internal battle between the trust I wanted to build and the distrust ingrained by years of neglect. But the persistence of Donna Lucia and Seu Antonio, the consistency of Helena, and the support of Marcia, my school counselor, began to create cracks in this fear. I learned that transformation didn't happen magically, but through small daily interactions that taught me my worth wasn't dependent on my parents' judgment. Gradually, these small emotional victories accumulated, and a sense of control over my own life began to emerge, something I had never experienced before. Reconnecting with my sister Bianca was another delicate step. For years, she and I had been silent accomplices in a cycle of fear and submission. When she finally found the courage to report the abuse, we sat together for the first time, without having to protect ourselves or hide what we felt. Talking about our fears, our pain, and our frustrations was liberating, albeit painful. Bianca possessed a hidden strength, a courage that I was still learning to recognize in myself. Together, we began to realize that we were capable of planning a life not determined by our parents' neglect. The presence of Rafaela, Bianca's friend, as a witness and support, brought greater security and reinforced the feeling that we were not alone. These new, strengthened bonds were fundamental to rebuilding our trust in the world and the people around us. With each open conversation, each act of care, fear began to fade, giving way to a cautious but firm hope. At the same time, I faced the challenge of reconciling with my own identity and feelings. For years, I had repressed my sensitivity, believing that showing emotion was a risk. Now, I realized that my tears, my questions, and my vulnerabilities were not weaknesses, but signs of humanity. I began writing about my experiences, first for myself, then sharing them in small support groups, and this expression became a form of therapy. Putting words to confusing feelings helped organize my mind and transform pain into learning. Each account I wrote strengthened my voice, my sense of worth, and the realization that my experiences could help others in similar situations. It was in this process that I realized that overcoming didn't mean forgetting, but integrating the past into my story so that it no longer controlled my present. Writing became my bridge to the future, a tool of resilience that I could carry with me forever. Despite the progress, there were moments of regression, moments when fear returned with a vengeance. Memories of my parents' indifference, their cruel comments, and their tortuous justifications haunted me. At these times, I felt like giving up, isolating myself again, believing the world still had no place for me. But looking at my new family and my sister, I realized that giving up was not an option. Their every gesture of care, every smile, and every word of encouragement served as a constant reminder that life could be different. I learned to identify these triggers and face them, to name my feelings, and to seek support when memories of the past threatened to overwhelm me. Overcoming, I understood, was not linear. It required patience, courage, and emotional discipline. Learning to protect myself emotionally without completely shutting myself down became a daily exercise, and each small victory motivated me to continue, to resist, to believe that I deserved a better future. It was during this period that I discovered the power of planning my future. Before, any idea of planning was just a fantasy, because my life was under the control of others. Now, I could dream and set real goals, study with focus, prepare for high school, and eventually enter university, support my sister and ensure her safety, build relationships based on trust and respect. Each goal, no matter how small, became a milestone of independence and resilience. The feeling of being in control of my own story was unprecedented, and with it came a confidence I never imagined I possessed. I realized that overcoming wasn't just about moving away from the pain, but transforming that pain into motivation to create something better. What seemed impossible became gradual, and steady progress showed me that my life wouldn't be defined by abandonment and abuse, but by the courage to rebuild it with love, care, and purpose. Over time, I realized that overcoming wasn't just about me, but also about the small daily achievements that showed me I could trust the world again. Waking up without feeling immediately afraid, being able to laugh without feeling guilty, establishing sincere friendships, and feeling that my opinions were valued were silent but powerful victories. Each daily routine, from leisurely breakfasts with Donna Lucia to bedtime conversations with So Antonio, represented a step toward rebuilding my self-esteem. I learned to observe my feelings without judging them, to identify when old fears were trying to control me, and to react consciously, choosing not to let the past dominate me. This realization was crucial. Finally, I understood that the pain I carried no longer needed to define who I was. Every gesture of care I received, every word of encouragement, helped reshape my view of the world and what is possible when one has real support. It was as if I was learning to walk again, but this time on solid ground, with an invisible yet reliable safety net that allowed me to explore, take risks, and grow. The feeling of emotional freedom, even though accompanied by scars, began to consolidate, showing that overcoming did not mean forgetting, but learning to live despite the pain. My sister Bianca became a fundamental partner in this process. Seeing her transformation from a withdrawn and scared girl to a young woman finding the strength to assert herself and seek justice inspired me daily. We shared fears, achievements, small victories, and even frustrations, building a bond based on empathy and mutual care. Rafaela's support was also essential, showing us that trusted external connections could be as important as blood ties. Together, we were learning that true family isn't limited to biology, but to the protection, affection, and loyalty one chooses to offer. This understanding transformed our relationship with the past. Instead of dwelling on pain and guilt, we began to plan concrete actions to ensure our safety and well-being. Each step in this direction reinforced my determination not to allow past experiences to define me, but rather to become the foundation for building something solid, healthy, and resilient. As I worked to solidify my sense of self-worth and security, I faced new social and academic challenges. School, once a neutral environment, became a space for learning and connection, but also for exposing my vulnerabilities. Dealing with peers, dealing with teachers, and trusting adults outside my foster family required daily courage. There were times when I felt intimidated, times when memories of my childhood made me question my ability to belong. But each challenge I faced, each small success, increased my confidence. I realized that overcoming the past wasn't just emotional, but also social. Learning to position myself, express myself, and build healthy relationships was part of rebuilding who I was. The feeling of being able to contribute to my own story, not just react to it, was liberating. It was a slow but profound transformation that solidified the idea that life could be lived fully, even with scars. My relationship with my parents remained distant, but now with a different perspective. I learned to recognize that I couldn't change the past, and that their responsibility for the damage caused couldn't be reversed by my actions. This understanding brought relief and control. I was no longer a helpless victim, but someone who acknowledged their experiences and sought reconstruction with tools and appropriate support. During supervised meetings, I was able to maintain my composure, even in the face of attempts to provoke or devalue me. This posture didn't mean an absence of pain, but a newfound strength to deal with adverse situations without them paralyzing me. Learning to set clear boundaries and prioritize my emotional health became fundamental to my self-esteem and to protecting my sister. Each time I managed to remain calm, express my opinions, or protect myself from manipulation, I felt the path of overcoming challenges solidify, laying the foundation for an independent and emotionally healthy life. The most defining moment of this period of reconstruction was realizing that my future depended on me. For the first time, I could dream without fear, set goals, and feel genuine hope. Planning my studies, considering my career, strengthening family and social ties, supporting Bianca, and cultivating true friendships became part of my daily life. The feeling of autonomy was accompanied by responsibility, but also by pride. I understood that overcoming wasn't about erasing the pain, but learning to transform it into motivation to build something better. Each challenge overcome, each achievement, however small, was a testament to resilience and inner strength. I felt capable of facing the world with courage, confidence, and a sense of self-worth that had previously been lacking. This realization cemented the certainty that life could be rebuilt, that the past didn't need to determine the future, and that I had the right to be happy, protected, and respected. Even with all the progress, there were times when the past seemed to pull me back, almost suffocating me. Some days were like opening an old wound that wouldn't heal. small triggers, unexpected. In comments or memories made me relive my parents' abandonment and coldness. At these times, anxiety tightened my chest, and the feeling of helplessness returned with a vengeance. But unlike the past, now I was not alone. Donna Lucia, So Antonio, and Helena became essential pillars, offering not only guidance, but examples of patience, empathy, and consistency. With them, I learned to name my fears, to understand that my emotions were valid and that I had the right to react and protect myself. I discovered that true strength was not the absence of pain, but the ability to acknowledge it, face it, and still move forward. Each day that I managed to deal with painful memories without paralyzing myself was a silent but profound victory, strengthening my sense of worth and my confidence in life. Gradually, what once seemed like a permanent shadow began to lose intensity, allowing the light of new experiences, healthy relationships, and opportunities to become visible and concrete. A defining moment came when I attended a school meeting with Marcia and other professionals, addressing not only my academic needs, but also my emotional well-being. For the first time, I felt genuinely heard, with respect and consideration. This experience showed me that my voice carried weight, that my experiences were not invisible, and that I could actively participate in shaping my future. The feeling of being able to speak up, be understood, and make decisions about my own life was unprecedented and transformative. I remember looking at Bianca and seeing in her eyes the same hope I felt growing within me. Together, we were learning that the past didn't have to define us, and that every choice we made now could be a victory over years of abuse and abandonment. This realization brought a sense of freedom I never imagined possible and empowered me to face the challenges ahead with greater confidence and determination. As I progressed, I began to take on responsibilities that previously seemed impossible. Planning my studies, organizing my time, and dealing with the demands of daily life without constant fear was a silent but impactful achievement. Each challenge I resolved showed me that I could trust myself, that my decisions had value, and that I didn't need to depend on approval or fear to act. Bianca also grew in this process, finding the courage to express herself, take a stand, and participate in her own reconstruction. Together, we began to create a routine of mutual support, based on respect, communication, and trust, something we completely lacked as children. This delicate balance between autonomy and support was essential to strengthening our resilience and preparing us for future stages in life, demonstrating that overcoming challenges involves not only facing the past, but also building a solid and secure present. My relationship with my parents became a constant point of reflection. I learned that I couldn't expect them to change, nor could I justify abusive or neglectful behavior. Recognizing that they wouldn't be able to provide what I needed was painful but liberating. This awareness allowed me to set clear boundaries and focus on what truly mattered: my safety, my well-being, and caring for my sister. Setting boundaries wasn't just about protection, it was also about affirming my own dignity and worth. Each time I maintained this approach, I felt my confidence grow and my sense of autonomy solidify. The pain didn't disappear completely, but its influence on my life diminished, making room for conscious decisions, real dreams, and actions that strengthened my resilience. The definitive turning point came when I realized that despite all the scars, I could live without constant fear, without the feeling of helplessness. It was as if an invisible curtain had been lifted from my eyes, allowing me to see possibilities previously blocked by trauma. Feeling that I could build healthy relationships, set concrete goals, and protect my sister was transformative. I still carried painful memories, but they no longer defined me. The feeling of control over my own story, of emotional freedom, and of hope for the future solidified my self-confidence. For the first time, I felt that life could be lived with ease, even if scars remained. Overcoming grief ceased to be just a distant goal and became a daily practice, a way of living that combined care, courage, and self-love. Over time, I realized that rebuilding my life wasn't a single act, but a series of daily choices. Each decision to protect myself, prioritize my well-being, and support my sister became a silent victory. Donna Lucia and Seu Antonio remained my foundation, offering non-judgmental care and allowing me to discover my limits and capabilities. The previously non-existent sense of security grew stronger with each passing day, showing me that I could live without constant fear. The constant support of Helena, Marcia, and professionals who understood my past reinforced the idea that life could be different, that trustworthy adults existed, and that I was entitled to protection, love, and respect. This framework allowed me to begin to see the future not just as a possibility, but as something to be actively built, with conscious choices and responsibility for my own story. With each small achievement, my sense of worth grew, and the pain of the past, though still present, ceased to dominate. Bianca became a symbol of our transformation. Seeing her courage grow, her ability to stand up and fight for justice, even in the face of traumas similar to mine, filled me with pride and hope. She learned to trust herself and the adults who supported us, and together we discovered that our relationship could be one of partnership and complicity rather than fear and submission. Each step she took to free herself from the cycle of abuse strengthened us and showed me that overcoming grief is a collective process based on mutual support and trust. The feeling of being able to face the world together, of building a safe emotional home, and of caring for each other cemented the certainty that true family goes beyond blood ties, being defined by love, care, and respect. Life began to take on colors I hadn't even realized existed. School stopped being a place of fear and became a place of learning, where my ideas and opinions were valued. Achieving small goals, receiving recognition for my effort and dedication, and seeing my potential recognized by others was transformative. Each academic achievement, each moment of healthy interaction with peers and teachers increased my confidence and strengthened my sense of belonging. I learned that overcoming trauma doesn't mean erasing painful memories, but integrating these experiences into my story so that they become a source of learning and motivation. This realization changed the way I viewed my own life. I was no longer defined by my parents' neglect, but by the choices I made daily to grow, learn, and care for myself and my sister. With this new perspective, I realized that emotional freedom and autonomy were achievements that needed to be constantly cultivated. Every decision I made, every moment I managed to deal with feelings of insecurity or fear without letting them overwhelm me, strengthened my resilience. Practicing empathy, open communication with my sister, and the ongoing support of my foster family showed me that it was possible to live a healthy life, even after years of trauma. I understood that overcoming adversity isn't linear. There are ups and downs, moments of fragility and fear, but the awareness that we can choose how we react to these situations makes all the difference. This skill became a fundamental tool for planning for the future and ensuring we don't repeat harmful patterns. My name is Tiago, and today I look back and see a journey marked by pain, abandonment, and neglect, but also by courage, resilience, and transformation. Bianca and I learned that overcoming doesn't mean forgetting, but growing despite the pain. Our experiences taught us the importance of choosing who will be in our lives, of setting clear boundaries, of caring for ourselves, and of supporting each other. I learned that true family is one that offers security, love, and consistency, not just blood ties. Every step I took to rebuild my life, every moment of trust and hope, cemented the certainty that even in the face of the greatest difficulties, it is possible to overcome, to create roots of happiness, and to plan a future that makes sense. Overcoming is a daily practice, a conscious choice to live with courage, love, and purpose.